You think getting old means peace and quiet, right? Ha. Big mistake. Especially when you've got a biological daughter who's worse than a rattlesnake, eyeing your retirement money. That, my friend, is when a nightmare truly begins. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I'm 78 years old. Most of my life, I dedicated to the books at the library. After I retired, I settled down in this quiet little town in Ohio, living what I thought was a pretty comfortable, peaceful life. I love it here. It's quiet, you can look up and see blue skies and white clouds, none of that big city noise. My husband, Robert, passed away a few years ago. He was a good man, always put my needs first. Before he left, he made sure I had a really decent pension and a substantial life insurance policy. He told me, "Eleanor, these are for your golden years. Don't worry, I'll make sure you're well taken care of." And he really did. So for years, I'd been quite comfortable, no financial worries at all. Every morning, I'd wake up early, make myself a hot cup of tea, grab an old book, and sit by the kitchen window, looking out at the roses in the garden. Those roses, Robert and I tended to them together when he was still alive. He always said my hands had a magic touch, making the flowers bloom so vibrantly. Now they still bloom just as beautifully, red, pink, white, each one like a cherished memory Robert left me, quietly unfolding. I love walking among the flowers, snipping off wilted petals, watering them, and breathing in that fresh, clean scent. It always made me feel so grounded. Besides tending the garden, my favorite thing was going to church every week with my old friend, Sarah. Sarah's a few years younger than me, but our friendship goes back over half a century. We were neighbors growing up, went to school together, got married, had kids. We've seen each other through all of life's ups and downs. Whenever we went to church, we'd always find a corner to whisper about our daily lives, catch up on the latest gossip. The pastor's voice was always so gentle, and the choir's singing was beautiful. It felt like an invisible force was gently lifting me up, leaving my heart warm and cozy. I thought my golden years would be just like this. Peaceful and content, surrounded by the scent of roses and the companionship of my old friend. But then, like a stone suddenly dropped into a calm lake, my only daughter, Brenda, a woman in her early 50s, suddenly showed up at my doorstep with her 2 teenage kids. She'd been off somewhere trying to make a business work, and for years my daughter and I hadn't seen much of each other. Every time we talked on the phone, she was either complaining about her business failing or how difficult the kids were. I felt for her, but being so far away, there wasn't much I could do to help. So when she suddenly pulled up into my driveway in her slightly beat-up SUV, laden with bags and boxes, I was genuinely surprised. "Mom, I'm home," she called out, stepping out of the car and waving at me, a long-lost smile on her face. Her 2 kids also scrambled out of the car, a boy and a girl, both so tall now. I still remembered them as just little kids. They called me Grandma, their voices a bit unfamiliar, but it still made me happy to hear. The first thing Brenda did after coming inside was hug me, her voice a little tearful. "Mom, you're getting old. My business failed, and now I've lost everything. There's nothing else for me to do. I figured it's time I came back to take care of you, so you're not all alone." She sounded so sincere then, her eyes red-rimmed, and my heart just ached. I was incredibly touched, thinking my child had finally matured and realized her old mother needed looking after. My house wasn't a mansion, but it was spacious, so it wouldn't matter if a few more people lived here. I even felt a little excited, thinking the house would be lively again. But who would have thought this filial piety would turn out to be a sugar-coated poison? After Brenda and the kids moved in, my life spun completely out of control, like a wild horse that had broken free. For the first few days, she was quite attentive, cooking for me, chatting with me. The kids were a bit noisy, but the house was filled with laughter, and I thought it was nice. It didn't take long, though, for things to start feeling off. She began making decisions for me, and she acted as if it was her absolute right, leaving me no room to argue. "Mom, you're not as young as you used to be, are you? Don't keep running around outside. It's so comfortable at home. Why don't you just watch TV inside, and I'll peel some fruit for you?" This was her first step in restricting my social life. I loved going to the senior center to play cards with friends or reading the newspaper at the community library. But every time I mentioned going out, Brenda would find some grand-sounding excuse. At first it was, "It's windy out, you might catch a cold," and that would be terrible. Later it became, "Mom, you're not strong enough to go out. What if you fall or hurt yourself? What would my kids and I do?" She would even call my old friends beforehand and politely decline their invitations for me, saying I wasn't feeling well and needed rest. One time, Sarah invited me out for lunch. We'd already made plans, but the night before, Brenda suddenly said, "Mom, tomorrow for lunch, I'll make your favorite beef stew. You should just stay home and rest." I thought it was a bit strange, but her tone was so firm, and she seemed so concerned, I couldn't really refuse. The next day, when Sarah called, I told her I couldn't make it. After hanging up, I felt a strange sense of loss, like something was quietly slipping away. Next, she started handling my mail. The mail carrier would deliver letters to the mailbox, but before I could even get to them, she'd already brought them in. "Mom, your eyes aren't good, and the print's tiny. Let me look for you, save you the trouble." She'd say this and then just open my mail directly, from bank statements to insurance notices, even my gardening magazines. She'd go through everything first. I felt a bit uncomfortable at the time. It was my privacy after all, but she always had a ready explanation like, "There are too many scammers targeting seniors these days. I'm just afraid you'll get tricked." Or, "These bills are complicated. I'll help you see if there's anything you don't understand." On the surface, she said it was all for my own good, but I distinctly felt my personal space being eroded little by little. It felt like someone was pulling open your drawers, taking out your belongings one by one to examine them, and you were powerless to stop it. What made me most uneasy was that she even started interfering with my medication. As I've gotten older, I have a few minor ailments, so I take several medications every day. I've always had my own pill organizer, with doses sorted for morning, noon, and night. But after Brenda arrived, she'd suddenly appear when I was taking my pills, staring at the tablets in my hand, her brow furrowed. "Mom, is your doctor prescribing too many pills? These small ones in this bottle, and the big ones in that bottle, don't they seem a bit redundant? You don't want to overdo it." She'd take my pill bottles, study the instructions for a long time, and then suddenly take one or two away saying, "I think you can stop taking this one for now. You can take it again in a few days if you don't feel well." Something always felt off in my gut. How can you just stop taking doctor-prescribed medication? But she always had a plausible explanation, even spouting twisted reasoning like, "Western medicine has strong side effects," or "Avoid taking it if you can." I couldn't argue with her. I always felt like I didn't have as much energy as before, and my spirits weren't as good. I wondered if it had to do with her messing with my medication, but I couldn't be sure. My old friend Sarah is a perceptive person. Whenever she visited, she'd sense the strange atmosphere in the house. She tried several times to talk to me alone, but Brenda was always like a shadow, never leaving my side. The moment Sarah walked in, Brenda would greet her warmly, holding a cup of tea or some fruit, saying, "Aunt Sarah, you're here. Mom's not feeling great today, a bit sleepy after her medicine." Or, "Mom just fell asleep. Lack of sleep isn't good for her at her age. Maybe you could come another time?" She always found various excuses to prevent Sarah from entering my room, or from letting Sarah and me have a private word in front of her. Sarah wasn't able to see me several times, or our hurried chats were interrupted by Brenda. I could see the confusion and worry in her eyes, but I could only give her a helpless smile. That invisible pressure made me feel more alone than ever before. Before long, I noticed something was off with my bank statements. I always kept track of my finances. I knew exactly how much pension I received each month and how much money Robert had left me. In the past, my money didn't go quickly because I lived simply. Besides daily expenses, I'd just occasionally buy some new plants for the garden or a few books. But now, when I opened my bank statements, there were suddenly small expenses I didn't recognize at all, and they were quite frequent. $50 here, $100 there, sometimes just a few tens of dollars. Individually, they didn't look like much, but they added up because of the frequency. Where was all this money going? I asked myself. Even stranger, even though I hadn't been spending recklessly, my living expenses were mysteriously shrinking. Before, I could buy enough groceries for a week with one trip to the supermarket. But now, every time Brenda or the kids came back from the supermarket, even though they carried bags and boxes, it felt like the snacks and household items were used up incredibly fast, and my budget quickly ran dry. I held the bank statement and cautiously asked Brenda, "Brenda, look, there are some expenses here that I don't remember at all." She glanced at it, then shrugged casually and said, "Oh, Mom, are you mistaken? Prices have gone up so much these days. $50 used to buy a lot of things, but now it's just a tiny bit. Living expenses are really high, don't you think?" As she spoke, she would naturally take the statement from my hand, quickly flip through a few pages, and then put it down, as if it wasn't worth mentioning. Sometimes, she would suddenly sigh heavily in front of me, her voice weary and resigned. "Mom, you don't know, my business failure this time really cost me all my savings. Now I'm completely empty-handed. I can barely scrape together tuition for the kids. Oh, life is really tough." She would occasionally mention her difficulties, her tone full of implication, as if saying, "Mom, you have money, you should help me." I felt a knot in my stomach listening to her. She was my daughter, after all. If she was in trouble, of course, as her mother, I wanted to help her. But something still felt off. Were these small expenses and my shrinking living costs really just due to rising prices and her financial difficulties? Or was this money being spent somewhere I didn't know about, on herself? I started to become suspicious, and every night, lying in bed, those blurry numbers and Brenda's tired face swirled in my mind. I told myself she was my daughter, she wouldn't hurt me. But deep down a voice whispered, "Be careful, Eleanor, things might not be as simple as they seem." This feeling of being kept in the dark and powerless was like a sweet poison, slowly corroding my once peaceful and serene retirement. That night, a nightmare jolted me awake. In the dream, I was trapped in a transparent cage, and Brenda was laughing at me from outside, holding my bank card. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. When I woke up, I was terribly thirsty, my throat feeling as if it were clogged with sand. I looked at the small alarm clock by my bed, 2:30 a.m. The house was silent. The kids were probably sleeping like logs, and Brenda's room was dark. I carefully climbed out of bed, trying not to make a sound, so I wouldn't wake them. The kitchen was downstairs. I put on my slippers and groped my way down the stairs in the dark. As I reached the living room, I suddenly heard a faint sound. It was Brenda's voice. It was very low, like she was whispering. My heart leaped. Who was she talking to at this hour? I instinctively stopped, hiding behind the doorway between the living room and the kitchen, holding my breath, and quietly peeking into the living room. Only a small table lamp in the corner of the living room was on, casting a dim light. Brenda was sitting on the sofa, her back to me, holding her phone, her voice even lower, almost a whisper. She didn't notice me and continued talking. "Yes, that old woman, she's fading fast." My heart plummeted, as if struck by a heavy stone. Old woman? Was she talking about me? Besides me, who else was an old woman in this house? My hand trembled involuntarily, almost knocking over the glass I was holding. Brenda said a few more things, but I couldn't quite make them out. I only caught a few fragmented words. "I've already arranged it. That doctor will also help me prove she's not of sound mind." Buzz, something exploded in my head. Not of sound mind? What was she trying to do? I suddenly remembered her strange behaviors from before, restricting me from going out, interfering with my mail, and those medications she arbitrarily stopped. A chill shot from my feet to the top of my head, making my blood almost freeze. This wasn't just unfilial. This was evil, premeditated. Brenda's voice continued, a bit clearer this time, as if making a final confirmation. "This way I can get her money and insurance. You know my situation right now. If I don't get this money, I'm really finished." Boom. I felt like my whole world had collapsed. My money. My insurance. So everything she had done was for my money. All those sweet words of filial piety. All those grand-sounding excuses of doing it for my own good were all a scam. She hadn't come back to take care of me. She had come back to wait for me to fade, and then take everything I had. She even wanted to make me fade. This thought, like a lightning bolt, shattered all my lingering hopes and illusions. I felt a strong wave of nausea, my stomach churning. That was my own daughter. How could she do this? She actually wanted to turn me into a helpless invalid, stripped of my sanity and ability to act, and then steal all my life savings. I clamped my hand over my mouth, terrified of making a sound. Tears streamed down my face silently, cold against my cheeks. I felt a betrayal and fear I'd never known. In that moment, I felt like someone who had fallen into an ice hole, a bone-chilling cold radiating through my entire body. I quietly retreated upstairs, back to my room, and lay on the bed, but I couldn't sleep anymore. All night, Brenda's words, "The old woman is fading fast," played on a loop in my ears, clinging to me like a curse, making it impossible to breathe. For the next few days, I was in a daze. Looking at Brenda's face, it seemed like she was wearing a mask. She still put on a show of being filial, bringing me tea and water, but I knew a venomous snake was hiding underneath. I didn't dare show any abnormality, afraid she'd realize I'd overheard her secret, which would put me in even greater danger. My heart felt crushed by a lead weight, so heavy I could barely breathe. Just as I was still trying to process this terrifying truth, the uninvited guest truly arrived. A few days later, on a sunny afternoon, the doorbell suddenly rang. Brenda went to answer it, and I heard a man's voice, sounding professional, a bit official. "Hello, I'm John Smith, from the Independent Assessment Center. I have an appointment today to conduct a cognitive ability assessment for Ms. Eleanor Vance." My heart leaped as if I'd been electrocuted. Assessment? Cognitive ability? I immediately thought of Brenda's words on the phone. Proof she's not of sound mind. So this wasn't just talk. Her plan had already begun. Brenda's face instantly contorted into an expression of concern. She stepped aside to let the man in, her voice a bit low, but clear enough for me to hear. "Oh, Mr. Smith, you're finally here. My mom's condition lately is truly hard to explain. As you can see, she's getting on in years, forgets a lot of things, rambles and is incoherent. Sometimes she even forgets her own name. It's heartbreaking." As she spoke, she sneaked a glance at me, a warning in her eyes. I sat on the living room sofa, trying to remain calm. The man who called himself Smith looked to be in his 50s, dressed in a sharp suit, holding a folder and a pen. He nodded at me, offering a polite smile, but there was a hint of imperceptible scrutiny in that smile. He walked over and sat on the single armchair beside me, beginning his questions. "Ms. Vance, hello. I need to ask you a few questions. Please answer truthfully." His questions were standard, such as my name, age, today's date, what season it was, and so on. Although I was furious inside, I forced myself to remain calm. I knew I couldn't show any abnormality, or I'd fall into their trap. I tried to make my voice sound calm and clear, striving for accurate answers to every question. But Brenda wasn't idle. She kept interjecting from the side, like a dutiful caretaker. "Oh, Mr. Smith, don't mind how well Mom's answering now. Sometimes she even forgets what she ate for dinner yesterday. Or, she once put the kettle in the fridge, saying she needed to cool it down." Some of the things she said were exaggerations, and others were things she had secretly tampered with and then blamed on me. She even mentioned that I had mixed up my pills once, which was when she had deliberately swapped my pill organizer, and then observed my reaction. Every time she spoke, I could feel Mr. Smith's gaze lingering on me longer, with a certain scrutiny. My fists were clenched tightly on my lap, my nails almost digging into my flesh. But I could only maintain a smile, trying to appear composed, even feigning guilt over Brenda's concern. It was a cruel irony. My own daughter, right in front of me, was painting me as a forgetful, muddled, even demented patient. She was destroying me. I could even sense that smugness and eagerness in her eyes. The assessment lasted about half an hour. Mr. Smith scribbled in his notebook, occasionally looking up at me, then at Brenda. Finally, he closed his folder, politely said, "Thank you for your cooperation," and then left. Brenda saw him out, and when she returned, she had a triumphant expression on her face. She smiled at me. "Momsy? Don't worry, Mr. Smith will understand you. He'll give us a professional conclusion." That sentence was like a knife, piercing my heart. She wanted to declare me incapacitated, so she could openly control everything I had. I felt desperate. Being schemed against by my own daughter, being assessed by a stranger. This feeling was worse than death. Just when I felt like I was suffocating, my old best friend, Sarah, finally found an opportunity. She knew Brenda's way of operating too well, knew she would obstruct. That day, Brenda said she was going to the supermarket to buy some meat, which would take some time. Sarah used this window of opportunity to quietly slip into my house. She didn't ring the doorbell. She just came straight through the back door, which was usually unlocked. Only Sarah and I knew that. The moment she stepped inside, she headed straight for my room. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring blankly, feeling completely drained. The moment she saw me, her brow furrowed. "Eleanor, you look terrible. What happened? What has that woman done to you?" Her voice was filled with worry and urgency. Seeing Sarah, all the pent-up grievances and fear I had been suppressing instantly erupted. I poured out everything that had happened in the past few days, from overhearing Brenda's phone call to the arrival of that assessor. My voice trembled with emotion, and tears streamed down my face. "Sarah, she wants to make me fade. She wants my money and my insurance. She even found some assessor to declare me mentally incompetent." Sarah's face went pale as she listened. Her eyes, which usually sparkled with laughter, were now filled with shock and anger. "What? She dares to do this to you? She's completely insane." She gripped my hand. It was cold and trembling. "What am I going to do, Sarah? I feel trapped, she's closing in on me, and I have nowhere to run," I said, almost sobbing. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She patted the back of my hand, her eyes becoming resolute. "Don't be afraid, Eleanor. We won't let her get away with this. You still have me. I know a very, very famous elder law attorney named Henderson. He's well known throughout the state. He specializes in family disputes, especially cases involving elder rights. He's experienced and resourceful. He'll definitely be able to help you." Hearing the word attorney, a glimmer of hope instantly ignited in my heart. The law? Yes, I still had the law. I wasn't alone. Attorney Henderson? I repeated the name, feeling it like a ray of light piercing the darkness in my heart. Sarah told me that Attorney Henderson had handled many similar cases. He was not only professional but also very compassionate, adept at advocating for the maximum rights of victims. She told me not to worry. She would find a way to contact him. Over the next few days, Sarah and I began to act in secret. Brenda had no idea of our counterattack plan. She continued to control the household's rhythm as usual, unaware that I, this old woman, had quietly picked up my weapon. 2 days later, Sarah came again, even more cautiously this time. Brenda had gone to pick up the kids, leaving only a short half-hour window. Sarah handed me a few small, inconspicuous items. "Eleanor, I got these for you. This is a miniature voice recorder. Hide it in your cardigan pocket or in your everyday bag. It's almost impossible to spot." She pointed to a black square smaller than my thumb. "And this," she continued, handing me a metal keychain with a few lines etched on it, looking very ordinary. "It looks like a normal keychain, but it has a miniature camera hidden inside. It can discreetly take photos. You can hang it on your belt or leave it on a table. No one would ever suspect." I took these items, my heart a mix of emotions. All my life, I'd rarely even argued with anyone, and now I was going to become a secret agent, in my own home, dealing with my own daughter. How absurd, and how tragic it sounded. But I knew this was my only chance. And this. Sarah pulled out a stack of crumpled pieces of paper from her bag, and carefully pieced them together. I quietly retrieved these from Brenda's trash can. I saw the words mental competency evaluation, and quickly took them. See, even though they're torn, when you put them together, it's an assessment form. I looked at the fragments, my hands trembling. It was the assessment form from Mr. Smith, with my name on it. This was undoubtedly solid proof that Brenda wanted me declared incompetent. My daughter was truly pushing me step by step into the abyss. Eleanor, these are all evidence. With them we have a chance to win. Sarah's eyes were resolute. In that moment I no longer felt afraid. Instead, I felt a surge of unprecedented determination. If you, Brenda, want to destroy me, then don't blame me for fighting back. I began my secret operations. On the surface, my life was the same as before. I continued to play the part of the muddled old woman, letting Brenda relax her guard. But in reality, my ears were perked up, and my eyes were sharper. I hid the miniature voice recorder in the pocket of my wool cardigan, which I wore every day, or under the sofa cushion. Brenda never noticed. I started recording her threats, her passive-aggressive comments, her words hinting that I was too old and needed to rest, and even the details of her plan that she inadvertently revealed during phone calls or when talking to herself. One time, she took a call probably thinking I was napping, and her voice wasn't as suppressed. That old woman's been a bit slow to react lately. Looks like I can increase the dosage of her medication. Another time, she was talking to herself in front of the mirror. Once she's gone, this house, this money, it'll all be mine. All these words were faithfully recorded. The keychain camera also came in handy. I hung it on my belt or casually placed it on the coffee table, facing Brenda. I took photos of her secretly rummaging through my drawers, looking for my bank passbooks and property deeds. I captured the moments when she took my pill organizer and then quietly put it back. I even managed to snap a photo once, when my back was turned, of her secretly taking a few bills from my wallet. Though a bit blurry, these photos were enough as evidence. I used to be a librarian. My whole life, I dealt with rules and order. Doing these sneaky things made me feel incredibly nervous and anxious. Every night, after Brenda and the kids were asleep, I would carefully take out the voice recorder, transfer the recordings to an old USB drive I had hidden away, and then listen to them carefully. Then I'd transfer the camera's photos to my computer and examine them one by one. Every time I heard Brenda's insidious voice, every time I saw her greedy actions, my heart felt like a knife twisting in my gut. That was my daughter. But now there was no turning back. I had to fight for myself, for the peace Robert had left me. This war without smoke had just begun. I felt like one of those old ladies in movies targeted by villains. Every step I took had to be careful, fearing that one misstep would send me plummeting into a bottomless abyss. Those recordings, those photos, and the assessment form Sarah pieced together from the trash. They were like my last straw of hope, clutched tightly, not daring to let go. I knew in my heart that these things were my weapons for fighting back, and irrefutable proof of Brenda's crimes. Sarah was even more anxious than I was. She knew that if Brenda's scheme succeeded, my life would be over. So, she wasted no time contacting Attorney Henderson. That day, to avoid arousing Brenda's suspicion, Sarah specifically chose a day when Brenda was taking the kids to a school event in a nearby town, saying it would be an all-day affair. I wore my most ordinary clothes, and even before leaving, I was so nervous my palms were sweating. Sarah drove her old Ford, taking me to Attorney Henderson's office. The office wasn't far from our town, on a quiet street downtown. The storefront wasn't large, but it looked very professional. Attorney Henderson's office was neat, with thick law books lining the shelves, and files stacked like small mountains on his desk. He had white hair and wore gold-rimmed glasses, looking very serious, but there was a reassuring strength in his eyes. As soon as he saw us, he stood up, nodded, and gestured for us to sit down. "Sarah has told me about your situation, Ms. Vance. You can take your time and tell me everything." His voice was deep and strong, which helped my tightly wound nerves relax a little. Sarah sat beside me, gently patted the back of my hand, and gave me an encouraging look. I took a deep breath and began to tell my story, from Brenda's filial move back home, to her gradually restricting my freedom and interfering with my life, to the suspicious expenses on my bank statements, and the terrible phone call I accidentally overheard. With every sentence, my heart felt like it was pricked by a needle, and the pain and anger I had forcibly suppressed surged back. When I took out the tiny voice recorder and keychain camera and placed them in front of him, Attorney Henderson's eyebrows subtly raised, and a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. He picked up the voice recorder and gestured for me to play it. As Brenda's low but crystal-clear voice echoed in the quiet office, "That old woman is fading fast. I've already arranged it. That doctor will also help me prove she's not of sound mind. This way I can get her money and insurance." I saw Attorney Henderson's face grow serious, his fingers lightly tapping the desk, a bit rapidly. Next, I tremblingly inserted the USB drive into his computer and opened the photos. Image after image, blurry but clearly showing Brenda's figure, appeared on the screen. Her secretly rummaging through my drawers, holding my passbook, her loitering suspiciously around my pillbox, and even the moment she took money from my wallet. Every time I saw a picture, my heart twitched. This was my own daughter, and everything she had done to me filled me with shame and a cold dread. Finally, Sarah handed Attorney Henderson the fragments of the mental competency evaluation form she had carefully pieced together from the trash. He took them, examined them closely, his eyes growing sharper and sharper. After listening to my story and reviewing all the evidence, Attorney Henderson was silent for a moment. Only our faint breaths could be heard in the office. After a while he looked up, his gaze very serious as he met mine. "Ms. Vance, the evidence you've provided is very strong," he paused, his tone grave. "From these recordings and documents, it appears your daughter, Brenda, is likely attempting to have you declared incapacitated through legal means. If she succeeds, she could gain guardianship over you and control all your assets and decision-making power. Even more alarming, she may be colluding with an unethical doctor to falsify medical certificates to achieve her goal. This is a very serious act of elder exploitation and fraud." My heart instantly plummeted into an ice cellar. Although I had already suspected it, when a professional attorney confirmed it firsthand, the fear overwhelmed me. She really wanted to turn me into a living dead person, and then treat my pension, Robert's insurance, and everything I had as her personal cash cow. However, Attorney Henderson's voice spoke again, pulling me back from despair. "The evidence you've collected gives us a very strong chance of winning. Especially this recording. It's the most direct evidence of her premeditation and motive. The photos also prove her infringement on your property and control over your life. We will take immediate action to stop her scheme." He explained the next steps to us, including how to apply for a restraining order to prevent Brenda from continuing to infringe upon my rights, and how to prepare legal documents to formally file a complaint with the court. In that moment, I felt a long-lost sense of security. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. I had Attorney Henderson. I had Sarah. I had the strength to fight back. On the way home, Sarah held my hand tightly. "Eleanor, don't be afraid. Attorney Henderson will definitely help you. He's a force to be reckoned with." I nodded, and the icy knot of fear in my heart finally showed a hint of melting. Attorney Henderson acted swiftly. The first thing he did was contact my family doctor, Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins, he's an old acquaintance of mine. I've lived in this town for so many years, and Robert and I had always seen him for our medical needs. He's an upright man and a skilled doctor. I trusted him completely. Attorney Henderson didn't directly tell Dr. Jenkins about Brenda's scheme. Instead, under the guise of inquiring about my health, he communicated with him and subtly brought up Brenda's caregiving methods and her interference with my medication. Dr. Jenkins listened to Attorney Henderson's description. At first, he was a bit perplexed, but when he heard that I was being assessed for cognitive ability and about Brenda's interference with my medication, his face immediately turned serious. He told Attorney Henderson that my health had always been good, and my spirit vibrant. There were absolutely no signs of the mental incompetence Brenda claimed. When Attorney Henderson further revealed that Brenda might be trying to have me declared incapacitated and possibly colluding with an unethical doctor, Dr. Jenkins was utterly shocked, followed by anger. "What? She dares to do such a thing?" Dr. Jenkins' voice rose several octaves over the phone. "This is an absolute disgrace. Ms. Eleanor Vance's physical and mental state has always been excellent. She is clear-minded and articulate. Where are these cognitive impairments? As her primary physician, I can provide the most detailed report to prove this. His tone was firm, filled with a sense of protection for me and a strong adherence to his professional ethics. Dr. Jenkins not only immediately promised to provide me with a detailed medical report proving my mental health, but he also proactively stated that he would report the Dr. Brenda might be colluding with to the state medical board. He said that such behavior completely taints the medical profession, and he would never tolerate it. Hearing Dr. Jenkins so resolutely stand by me, a wave of warmth washed over me. With such a good doctor as my backing, I felt even more confident. I remember the day of the court hearing very clearly. It was a gloomy morning, thick clouds filled the sky, as if foreshadowing a coming storm. I wore a beige jacket Sarah had specially picked out for me, with my voice recorder hidden inside. Sarah held my hand tightly, a hint of nervousness on her face, but more so determination. The atmosphere in the courtroom was so heavy it felt like it could crush a person. Even breathing felt difficult. At the defense table, Brenda sat there in a seemingly expensive dress, next to her lawyer, a very shrewd-looking middle-aged man. Brenda occasionally glanced my way, a challenging look and a hint of smugness I couldn't quite decipher in her eyes. She probably thought she had victory in her grasp. Brenda's lawyer spoke first, portraying me as an elderly person who was frail, suffering from memory loss, and unable to care for herself. Then they brought in a so-called expert witness, a young-looking psychiatrist. He emphatically declared that, based on his assessment of me, I was mentally incompetent and unable to independently manage my life and assets. He rattled off a bunch of medical terms and packaged all of Brenda's baseless accusations against me as medical symptoms, sounding completely plausible, as if I truly was too confused to care for myself. I sat there, trembling with rage, listening to those blatant lies, but I had to hold back, unable to show any weakness. Then it was Attorney Henderson's turn to speak. He walked to the witness stand and calmly and unhurriedly organized his papers. The entire courtroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. Your Honor and members of the court, we stand here today not to prove whether an elder is healthy, but to expose a meticulously planned fraud and exploitation targeting an innocent senior. Attorney Henderson's voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear and impactful. He didn't immediately refute the opposing, expert witness. Instead, he calmly took out a USB drive and handed it to the court clerk. Please play this recording. As Brenda's low but crystal clear voice echoed from the voice recorder, the courtroom instantly erupted. That old woman is fading fast. I've already arranged it. That doctor will also help me prove she's not of sound mind. This way I can get her money and insurance. Brenda's voice, tinged with excitement and smugness, reverberated through the courtroom. Every word was like a sharp knife, piercing the heart of everyone present. I saw Brenda's face instantly go white, her lips trembling as if she'd seen a ghost. Her lawyer's eyes widened, his face etched with shock and disbelief. The judge's brow was deeply furrowed, and the public gallery was abuzz with chatter and whispers. After the recording ended, Attorney Henderson then played the photos I had secretly taken. Images of Brenda secretly rummaging through my drawers, taking my documents, and even stealing money from my wallet appeared one by one on the large screen in the courtroom. This evidence stood there like irrefutable iron, causing Brenda's lies to instantly crumble. Next, Attorney Henderson called my family doctor, Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins entered, dressed in a white lab coat, his expression serious and professional. He first refuted the opposing expert witness's false testimony, using his solid medical knowledge and extensive clinical experience to describe my consistent physical and mental state in detail. Ms. Eleanor Vance, from my years of diagnostic records, her cognitive function is completely normal, her mind is sharp, and her memory is at an excellent level for her age. She shows no signs of dementia or mental disorder. The symptoms mentioned by the opposing doctor are either exaggerated or maliciously fabricated. Dr. Jenkins declared unequivocally, his voice reverberating through the courtroom, filled with authority and a sense of justice. He also specifically mentioned that I had been taking his prescribed medications normally, and Brenda's interference with my medication was completely irresponsible, even malicious behavior. The atmosphere in the courtroom reached its peak after Dr. Jenkins' testimony. Everyone looked at Brenda, their eyes filled with condemnation. Brenda sat there, her face ashen, her body trembling slightly, completely devoid of her previous arrogance. The case quickly caught the attention of the local media. Perhaps a reporter in the courtroom heard this dramatic story, or an insider leaked the information. A young reporter named Jason was deeply angered by the case. He felt it was not just a family dispute, but a typical and vicious case of elder abuse. Jason posted a report on social media with the headline, "A daughter's filial poison. A 70-year-old woman narrowly escapes her child's scheme." He detailed how Brenda feigned filial piety to get close to me, how she gradually restricted my freedom, stole my assets, and even attempted to use falsified medical documents to strip me of my legal capacity. He didn't mention my name, only referring to me as Ms. Eleanor, to protect my privacy. But the details from the recordings and photos, as well as Dr. Jenkins' testimony, made the story incredibly impactful. The news quickly caused an uproar on social media, being shared countless times, with the comment section filled with a torrent of condemnation. Many netizens left messages, condemning Brenda's shameless actions and expressing sympathy and support for me. "This is worse than an animal. A daughter like this should be sent to prison. Go, Ms. Eleanor, we support you." These messages flowed into my heart like warm currents. Subsequently, local television stations and newspapers also followed up on the story, and my case made headlines in the local news. Overnight, Brenda's misdeeds were completely exposed, making her a pariah in the community. And I, this once unknown old woman, suddenly found myself in the spotlight. Although it took some getting used to, it was more a feeling of being seen and supported. My personal struggle was no longer a lonely battle, but had gained the attention and support of the entire community, and even society at large. I felt an unprecedented strength. Justice, perhaps, truly would not be absent. That scene in the courtroom was like the calm after a storm. Though the chaos lingered, the sun had already pierced through the clouds, scattering light little by little. When Attorney Henderson played Brenda's recording, when Dr. Jenkins testified for me with such authority, the entire courtroom erupted. I looked at Brenda's ashen face, my heart a mix of emotions, anger, sorrow, but mostly the relief of having survived a great ordeal. I won. I really won. Finally, the court's verdict came down, with no surprises. The judge solemnly declared that I, Eleanor Vance, was fully competent and possessed complete rights to manage my own property and life. Brenda's attempt to seize my guardianship and assets had utterly failed. As the judge brought down the gavel with a final decisive tap, I felt the huge rock pressing on my chest finally lift, and a sense of lightness spread through my entire body, almost bringing tears to my eyes. Sarah hugged me tightly, her eyes red-rimmed, repeatedly murmuring, "That's wonderful, wonderful, Eleanor." In that moment, I felt like I had come back to life. But things didn't end there. Attorney Henderson told me this was just the first step. He wouldn't let Brenda get off so easily. After the trial, he immediately filed a new lawsuit against Brenda, accusing her of fraud and elder exploitation. He presented all the evidence we had collected, including the recordings, photos, and the fragments of the mental competency evaluation form Sarah had pieced together as exhibits in court. Attorney Henderson said Brenda's actions were not just unfilial, they were serious crimes. The police also got involved in the investigation. The officer assigned to the case, a young-looking but very sharp-eyed man, told me they would thoroughly investigate the falsified mental competency evaluation and Brenda's collusion with that unethical doctor. He said that this type of elder fraud was a felony in Ohio and would not be tolerated. I also handed over the materials Dr. Jenkins had provided to Attorney Henderson, including Dr. Jenkins' report on the involved doctor, to the police. Looking at the officer's serious expression, I knew Brenda was truly done for this time. She thought she could pull a fast one, but she had only driven herself into a corner. Now Brenda's misdeeds were completely exposed. Newspapers, television, and even the internet were discussing the case. Although I didn't make public appearances, the story of a 70-year-old woman in Ohio schemed against by her own daughter became a household topic. People talked about it on the streets and discussed it in stores. Brenda's name became almost synonymous with unfilial daughter. She could no longer put on that filial facade in front of me. After the court ruling, she shamefully moved out of my house with her children. She had no money, her business had completely collapsed, and no one wanted to work with her anymore. She tried to find a job, but everywhere she went, people recognized her and gave her contemptuous looks. People pointed and whispered behind her back, "Look, that's the woman who tried to harm her mother." Her reputation was completely ruined throughout the town, and even in several surrounding towns. She became a public outcast in the community, unable to hold her head up wherever she went. What pained me the most was that her children were also disgraced because of this. They were teenagers, a sensitive age. At school and in the community, they had to face strange looks from their peers, and some people would even point at them and say, "Aren't those the children of the woman who scammed her grandma out of money?" I heard Sarah quietly tell me that Brenda's children were ostracized at school and had to transfer to another city. This made me feel very bad. The children were innocent. They shouldn't have to pay for adults' mistakes. But Brenda had personally destroyed herself and her children's future. Not only did she not get my money, but she also faced hefty fines and possible jail time for fraud and falsifying evidence. She lost everything, ending up with nothing. I don't know what will happen to her in the future, but I know she paid her just desserts. Life finally returned to normal. I regained control of my bank accounts and all my assets. Attorney Henderson helped me manage everything perfectly, ensuring my money was safely back in my name. He also suggested I set up a trust fund, just in case. I changed all the locks in the house, and I had a cleaning company thoroughly clean the rooms where Brenda's family had lived, removing all traces of them. I put Robert's favorite photo back in the most prominent spot in the living room. Every morning, the sunlight would shine on it, warm and comforting. Sarah came to see me every day. She would tend to the roses with me in the garden, pruning and chatting. Sometimes we'd argue for ages about the color of a flower, then burst into uncontrollable laughter. She would take me to church, and we'd still sit in our familiar corner, listening to the pastor's sermon, feeling calm and peaceful. She would also take me to the senior center to play cards with old friends and catch up on the latest gossip. I was no longer restricted socially. I could go wherever I wanted and see whoever I wanted. That feeling of rediscovered freedom was more precious than anything. Our friendship, after this ordeal, grew even deeper. Sarah wasn't just my friend. She was my family, my savior. She didn't disdain me, she didn't back down. She always pulled me forward when I was at my most desperate. Every time I saw her, my heart was filled with gratitude. We would bake my favorite apple pie together. Sarah is a great baker. Her pies are sweet and delicious. As we ate pie, we'd reminisce about everything that had happened over the years. Sometimes we'd be full of emotion, and other times we couldn't help but laugh. This experience deeply moved me. I decided to write a book about my journey, titled, "My Retirement Savings Are Not Your ATM, Daughter." The process of writing was actually a form of healing for me. I poured all my pain, anger, fear, and ultimate triumph into the words. I hope this book can remind more seniors like me to be vigilant and protect themselves. Sometimes, the deepest wounds can come from those closest to you. After the book was written, I shared my story at the community center. The auditorium was packed with people, from white-haired elders to young adults. I stood on the stage, my voice a bit hoarse but my tone firm. I recounted how Brenda feigned filial piety, how she systematically eroded my life step by step until I overheard that fatal phone call. I showed the evidence Sarah helped me collect, how Attorney Henderson intervened, and finally, the court's judgment. When I spoke about the most difficult moments, some people in the audience quietly sobbed. When I spoke about justice finally arriving, the entire hall erupted in resounding applause. My story received a huge response. Many seniors came up to me, telling me they had similar troubles, but were afraid to speak out. I encouraged them to be brave, to stand up and seek help, not to suffer in silence. I told them that seniors also have dignity and rights. Our retirement savings are what we've worked hard for our entire lives. They're not anyone's personal ATM. My home, finally, was filled with sunshine and peace again. The roses in the garden bloomed even more vibrantly, as if smiling at me. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of coffee and baked pie, the scent of freedom and tranquility. Every day, I could sleep soundly, no longer haunted by nightmares. I still loved walking in the garden in the morning, tending to my roses, and I still loved going to church with Sarah. My life was simple and beautiful, and every morning, I felt lucky. Yes, I had experienced the darkest moment in my life, betrayed and hurt by the person closest to me. But because of it, I also realized that there is so much warmth and kindness in life, true friendship like Sarah's, and righteous people like Attorney Henderson. My life, like this land in Ohio, had endured the harshness of winter, but ultimately welcomed the bright spring, with everything coming back to life.